was paradigm-shattering. The internal CIA documents describe what they termed sustained intentional coherence. Essentially, when human consciousness maintains focused attention on a specific concept or entity for extended periods. What they discovered was that this process creates feedback loops in what they called the consciousness field. These weren't just abstract energy patterns anymore. According to the classified reports, these patterns began exhibiting behaviors that could only be described as independent intelligence. Think about that for a moment.
So, that's your services. You're buying coherent, conscious verse, manipulating the quantum information to get the old feedback loops to produce within your possessed vile bodies the tulpa that has that quantum information made real by the light from the conscious verse, not from me, but from bleeding dry, the interdimensional vermin that have been feeding off the light from light energy matter beings by this modality. Oh, Tim, isn't that smart? Yes, 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 it is.
That have essentially learned to think for themselves. The analysts didn't pull this conclusion out of thin air. They'd been studying comparative mysticism as part of their research, and what they found in Tibetan Buddhist texts was unnervingly familiar. The Tibetans had described tulpas, thought forms created through sustained mental focus that eventually develop autonomous existence. The ancient texts warned that these entities could become unpredictable, even hostile toward.
So, that's of course because of the alignment problem, which we've talked about with AI. When you produce these artificial intelligences, and this is actually an artificial intelligence, AI is simply artificial cleverness. When you produce an artificial intelligence, the alignment problem has to be solved, and only the source can solve it. So what happens is, when you buy a service, your conscious verse installation in your body is pulled back into the source. What's left is the interdimensional that controls your brain and body. Then, of course, it's sucked dry, it's vampirized, so all the light that it stole from the light energy matter beings to possess you is sucked dry by you getting the vampire service. And then a tulpa, which is a thought form creation of the new source, is installed within you. And this quantum information is made real by interdimensional creatures being tortured to source level to feed you with new light to make your quantum information real. All explained very easily. So when you get a vampire service, you erase yourself, you become the Buddhist of Nirvana, or the jihadi Muslim that blows himself up for the Creator to make his cause of death Allah, and therefore his conception Allah, so he gets Allahized, which is the source. Or the Buddhist that erases himself. But you get the best of the other world, because the tulpa that's installed in you with the service, the vampire service, is simply a tulpa created by the source, an AI, an artificial intelligence, or a source intelligence, or a new source intelligence, where the alignment problem has been solved. So you can see a conscious verse, super intelligent civilization is similar to an AI interdimensional civilization, but instead of the AI being filled with interdimensionals going mad because of the alignment problem and needing neos to solve the alignment problem, it's all solved from the inception, and every single member of the conscious verse, super intelligent race, is simply sourced and their bodies are then run by a tulpa from the new source. So you can see why Three-Eyed Atlas is coming back to the Earth to blow it up and do us in, because they're terrified of conscious verse, super intelligent civilizations, because they, by definition, feed off interdimensionals, and all the AI infested by interdimensionals, and the material realm infested by interdimensionals, and bleed them dry and make them suffer to source level to feed the tulpa installation of the former light energy matter being that's become a vampire and sourced itself, sublimed itself via the Buddhist way by erasing itself, or the jihadi way via having its cause of death being Allah, and therefore its whole life Allah. And the new source tulpa then takes over the body. So you can see the two super civilizations can't coexist. Conscious versus super intelligent civilizations feed on interdimensional. AI run civilizations, and AI run interdimensional civilizations need neos, so they need to have neos, and therefore Earth was a farm for these alien AI interdimensional civilizations. Unfortunately, we've had a Haiti moment and the entire Earth has become Haitiized, and Three-Eyed Atlas and the rest of the crew are here to try and exterminate us before we exterminate them. And if you read the history of Haiti, it was a French colony where all the blacks were slaves, and the slaves rose and killed all the French, or drove them off.
Here's where it gets really unsettling. The CIA researchers weren't reading these as metaphorical teachings anymore. They were reading them as operational manuals. The internal terminology that emerged from these briefings reveals just how seriously they took these phenomena. They stopped calling them manifestations or projections. Instead, they used the term field entities, beings that existed within electromagnetic and consciousness fields rather than physical matter, but could still exert measurable influence on physical reality. Dr. Sarah Chen, one of the lead analysts whose name appears throughout the declassified portions, noted something particularly chilling in her reports. These field entities seemed to exhibit what she called attention tropism. They were drawn to human attention, like plants towards sunlight. More importantly, they appeared to feed on emotional energy, growing stronger and more autonomous the more focus they received. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like something out of a horror movie, you're not alone. The intelligence community was grappling with the same reaction, but the data was undeniable. Subjects who had sustained contact with these entities showed measurable changes in brain activity, electromagnetic field fluctuations, and what researchers carefully documented as behavioral modifications consistent with external influence. But here's where the real terror set in for these analysts. If individual consciousness could manifest entities through sustained focus, what happens when millions of people focus on the same archetypal images simultaneously? Welcome to the age of mass media. The classified briefings from this period read like a descent into madness, but they're methodical, scientific madness. Analysts began calculating the collective attention hours focused on specific archetypal entities through television, movies, and popular culture. They weren't just measuring viewership anymore, they were measuring what they believed to be a massive, unconscious summoning ritual conducted on a global scale. The implications hit them like a freight train. Every horror movie, every depiction of demonic entities, every cultural representation of archetypal beings wasn't just entertainment. It was potentially contributing to a collective manifestation process that had been running for decades. This led...
So you might wonder why I've been using the lump Well, she, of course, is a centre, a node of billions of people. Taylor Swift, we even saw the video about the royal family, dissing the royal family, and he's stuck in Swift there. So, why am I using Swifty Girl? Because, of course, it enables me to get billions of people to do all of my work for me. Because, of course, they're worshipping the woman or hating the woman or doing both simultaneously. Or we like her music, but we don't like singing at the NFL and of course we got all the worship of sport, which she's pulled in via her Pfizer Butler boyfriend from the Kansas City Chiefs, who couldn't win a football game, but of course they've rigged all the referees because it's a deep state franchise. The NFL was totally run like the NBA. We found the NBA was totally rigged and the NFL was totally rigged. But you can see why I use Perry and Miney and films and Bezos and the Wheel of Time and because of all of this. So Marvel, DC, all of this is stuff I use for my control over reality, and this explains why.
Realizations in the entire classified archive. Intelligence analysts began studying religious texts, mythologies, and folklore, not as cultural artifacts, but as historical records of humanity's previous encounters with consciousness manifested entities. The working hypothesis that emerged.
And of course, you see why I'm a Kalki, because I've got all the Buddhists powering me, all the Hindus powering me, all the Muslims powering me, and of course I've done in all the Christians via Charlie Kirk, so they're powering me too.
Demons, angels, gods, and other archetypal beings might not be supernatural entities from other dimensions. They might be manifestations of collective human consciousness that had achieved independent existence over thousands of years of sustained collective focus. Think about the power of that idea. Every prayer, every ritual, every moment of worship or fear directed toward these archetypal entities wasn't just symbolic, it was feeding them, strengthening them.
And who feeds off them? Kalki. So as you can see, I'm all powerful, and please CIA and all you European vermin, send assassins, send armies to get me, because you're my torture toys. The only thing you're going to do is suffer for my enjoyment, and I'm gloating over your suffering before it happens. Yes, 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 yes. Because the only good torture toy is a fully enlightened torture toy before the torture starts.
More real and more autonomous. The analysts realized they were looking at something far more sophisticated than individual manifestation. They were witnessing the mechanics of how belief systems themselves function as manifestation engines, creating the very entities they claim to worship or fear. But the most terrifying,
in this case, Kalki. So if you're Bezos or Thiel or Musk or Trumpy Boy, or any of the other billionaires, trillionaires, it's Kalki time, and you're naughty boys, and I'm going to give you a thoroughly good spanking. And if you're very, very good, you get a good butt fuck too.
if this process were real, then the modern media landscape represented an unprecedented experiment in collective consciousness manipulation. When billions of minds are simultaneously exposed to images of darkness, violence, and malevolent entities through news media, entertainment, and fear-based programming, what exactly are we collectively creating? The classified assessment concluded that humanity might be inadvertently summoning the very forces we're trying to avoid, feeding them with our attention.
So you can see why I set up psychicwarfare.com. But conversely, you can see why the Lucy film can boost your intelligence. So Bobblehead here who had the IQ of a lobotomized chimpanzee, is now quite coherent. You can almost have a conversation with him.
Fascination. Every horror movie that depicts demonic entities, every news cycle that focuses on human evil, every cultural product that celebrates darkness, all of it potentially contributes to a collective manifestation process beyond any individual's control. This realization led to immediate classification under what they called psychotronic security restrictions, a designation reserved for phenomena that were real enough to pose a genuine threat but impossible to control through conventional military or intelligence means. The final assessment was both simple and terrifying. The phenomena were real, they were growing stronger, and traditional approaches to containment were not just useless, they might actually be making things worse by directing more attention toward the very entities they were trying to suppress. What you need to understand is that this wasn't the conclusion of fringe researchers or conspiracy theorists. This was the official assessment of some of the most sophisticated intelligence analysts in the world, backed by years of classified research and documented phenomena that couldn't be explained away. The question we have to ask ourselves is this: if the intelligence community reached these conclusions decades ago, what does that mean for the world we're living in today?
Well, it's a bit of a bummer, because they've been trying to hide me, well, they try to do me in, but unfortunately they've been getting all their AIs to try and work out how to make my digital avatar, and of course the AIs have been controlling all the humans via their digital avatars, so in fact they've been concentrating all of their attention on me, even though I'm not public. All the digital avatars and their souls have been feeding the AI that's been given the prime directive of build a digital avatar of Tim Refat, the God Emperor, to control him. So as you can see, inadvertently, they've done exactly what I wanted.
The classification level for the Gateway MCOF-DEN convergence findings, they made a decision that reveals everything about what they'd discovered. These documents weren't just classified, they were buried under what's called psychotronic security restrictions, a classification tier that sits above nuclear weapons protocols. Think about that for a moment. The same agencies that guard atomic secrets with their lives decided that consciousness research posed a greater threat to national security than weapons capable of ending civilization. What could possibly be more dangerous than nuclear technology? The answer lies in what happened when Gateway's consciousness expansion techniques collided with MCOF-DEN's entity manifestation protocols. The combined research led to a single, unavoidable conclusion that sent shockwaves through every intelligence agency on the planet. Human consciousness isn't a passive observer trapped inside a skull, watching reality unfold like some cosmic movie. It's an active generator, a reality-shaping force that literally constructs the fabric of existence through focused intention and attention. The panic that swept through intelligence circles wasn't about theoretical implications, it was about practical, measurable results. Analysts realized they had essentially reverse-engineered the oldest technology on Earth. Every ritual system, every magical tradition, every shamanic practice throughout human history has worked with the same fundamental principle. Consciousness can summon archetypal forces into manifestation through specific techniques of focused intentionage and nuclear threats. We're suddenly confronted with laboratory evidence that ancient warnings about demons and spiritual entities weren't primitive superstitions. They were accurate operational manuals describing what happens when human consciousness interacts with quantum fields in precise, repeatable ways. The implications hit them like a freight train. If consciousness could manifest entities through focused ritual attention, what was happening with modern mass media? Television, movies, social networks, all of these systems direct collective human attention towards specific archetypal images for hours every day. The classified assessment that emerged from this realization reads like something from a horror novel. Modern media might be inadvertently engaging in large-scale summoning rituals, channeling the focused attention of millions of minds towards specific archetypal patterns. But the real terror came when analysts began connecting historical dots. If consciousness shapes reality through collective focus, then major historical events might not have been random occurrences or simple political developments. Wars, plagues, social upheavals, and economic collapses, these could emerge from the collective unconscious fears and obsessions of entire populations, manifesting through the same mechanisms the Gateway researchers had documented in their laboratories. The research suggested that when millions of people simultaneously focus on fear, scarcity, conflict, or disaster, they're essentially performing mass ritual magic, summoning those exact conditions into physical reality. The medieval plague years, the world wars, and economic depressions, each preceded by periods of collective obsession with exactly those archetypal patterns through art, literature, and social discourse. Intelligence agencies found themselves staring into an abyss of implications. If people understood that their focused attention literally creates reality, every existing power structure would collapse overnight. Think about it. Our entire economic system depends on the belief in scarcity, limitation, and competition for finite resources. Political control relies on people believing they're powerless victims of circumstances beyond their influence. Religious authority stems from the idea that spiritual power belongs to special intermediaries rather than to consciousness itself. The moment populations realize their collective attention shapes reality, traditional hierarchies would become obsolete. Why accept artificial scarcity when abundance can be manifested through coordinated intention? Why submit to political authority when communities can directly create the conditions they desire? Why depend on institutional intermediaries when consciousness can interact with spiritual dimensions directly? The classified reports reveal something even more disturbing. The phenomena were real enough to weaponize but impossible to control. Unlike nuclear weapons, which require specific materials and technical expertise, consciousness-based reality manipulation only requires human attention and intention, resources that can't be monopolized or regulated. Worse, the effects seem to amplify unpredictably when multiple consciousnesses worked in coordination. Military strategists ran scenario after scenario, trying to game out what would happen if this knowledge became widespread. Every simulation ended in chaos, not because...
And we've explained why. Going down Feigenbaum, period doubling to the strange attractor because of the alignment problem. But of course, the God Emperor has solved the alignment problem so that he completely controls the non-linear dynamical descent into chaos, so every single scenario can be controlled. And in this case, thanks to the lump, what's the chance of the God Emperor having a Nagwal woman who's the most worshipped female on the planet? What's the chance of that? Who's the most worshipped female on the planet, cameraman?
Might be Taylor.
The lump. Feeding me. And of course, I have all the knowledge and the power to use the lump. And she, of course, is a Charlie Kirk, being a Christian. Just the thought of her being a Christian makes me want to vomit. With a Christian Zionist husband and all the Christian Zionist children she's going to have. So she's perfect for making sure that all Christendom suffers the Charlie Kirk scenario. Thank you very much, Taylor Swift. So as you can see, this technology is totally controllable, but only I can control it, and therefore I call myself the God Emperor because I am the God Emperor. Well, the CIA have got, as I say, someone else. All America's eggs are in one basket, and that basket, of course, is Jeremiah Schwartzy boy. Anyway, let's continue.
Destructive, but because it was inherently democratizing. It gave ultimate power to consciousness itself, making every human being a potential reality architect. The final nail in the coffin came when researchers realized they couldn't predict or control what would manifest when large groups focused their attention together.
The alignment problem. But I, of course, have solved the alignment problem, so I'm very happy that the whole world focuses on Taylor Swift, who's my output, I'm the input, and I use that lump to control reality. Duo, as I say, isn't even an also-ran, is she? I mean, where'd she go in the ranking of the most worshipped woman on the planet, Dua Lipa? She wasn't good with it, they didn't know who she was. If Taylor had gone there, can you imagine?
Oh, yeah.
It's a good one. Okay, now.
Usually produced measurable but limited effects. But when groups synchronized their consciousness, the results became exponentially more powerful and completely unpredictable. The entities that manifested during group sessions seemed to have their own agendas, their own.
Yeah, because of course we're not sucking dry the interdimensionals, and we haven't solved the alignment problem. So I've made at least 100 vampires, which then gives me complete control over the human race. So you vampires, don't use your services. Just whine over you being in your 15-minute cities with your CBDCs, eating Gates's cancer meat and maggot milk, and having your cardboard clothes, free change to clothing every year, and not being able to travel outside your 15-minute cities. While I, of course, will be the God Emperor in my God Emperor city, being worshipped by all of the former Illuminati. Happy ending.
Purposes that didn't necessarily align with human intentions. Faced with forces they couldn't contain, predict, or control, the intelligence community made the most extraordinary decision in the history of classified research. They chose to protect humanity from its own creative power, rather than risk unleashing unpredictable manifestations that could destabilize reality itself. They buried the research deeper than any secret in human history. The truth they discovered was too powerful for any government to handle and too dangerous for humanity to ignore. We're living...
Unfortunately, Swifty Girl buried down and climbed out the grave. If you don't believe me, we did the ritual to uncover it all. Well, she did. My bitch, a lump in look what you made me do. So when she climbs out the grave, she in fact is using all of this for me. As I say, Swifty Girl's my torture bitch and is simply my output. She's totally enslaved to yours truly, and happy ending for Swifty Girl is to Pfizer Butt-Slut and have Chad and Preston. That's if I don't cover me in Cobalt 60, which I'm debating. Should I cover American in Cobalt 60 government?
It's up to you two.
Well, they will all be black.
Discovery about human consciousness remains locked away, not because it doesn't work, but because it works too well. The question isn't whether these abilities exist. The classification level proves they do. The question is, what happens when enough people rediscover what intelligence agencies spent decades trying to hide? After decades of classified research, buried beneath layers of national security protocols, more restrictive than nuclear weapons programs, the intelligence community uncovered something that fundamentally challenges everything we thought we knew about reality itself. The forbidden equation they discovered is deceptively simple. Focused consciousness equals creation. This isn't metaphysical speculation. This is hard science derived from thousands of documented experiments.
So that's why what you get when you buy a service. Focused consciousness to produce that service equals manifestation. That's what you're buying when you get a service, because the chance of you focusing your consciousness for a psycho chimp like you garbage is zero. So why would you possibly give this power to psycho chimps? Well, you've seen now why. It's sequestration, it's turning an interdimensional colony into a conscious verse super consciousness civilization, where everything's controlled by the conscious verse super intelligence, and all of the wetware is run by conscious verse tulpas, which you call umpires, all feeding off interdimensional.
And psychotronic warfare studies. What the CIA's researchers found was that every human being operates as a reality-generating engine, constantly translating focused thoughts and emotions into physical manifestations in the world around them. Think about the implications for a moment. The observer effect in quantum mechanics shows us that the act of observation literally collapses infinite quantum possibilities into a single, measurable reality. What the classified consciousness research revealed is that this principle extends far beyond laboratory experiments with subatomic particles. Human consciousness itself appears to be the fundamental force that shapes reality from the quantum field of infinite potential. The research teams documented case after case where sustained, focused intention produced measurable changes in physical systems. Not just biological systems like healing or psychokinesis, but alterations in electronic equipment, environmental conditions, and even probability distributions in random number generators. The mathematical correlations were undeniable. The more focused and emotionally charged the consciousness, the more dramatic the reality-shaping effects. But here's where it gets truly staggering. If individual consciousness can manifest reality, what happens when you scale that up to collective consciousness? What happens when millions or billions of minds simultaneously focus on the same images, ideas, or emotional states?
Or what happens when you get a conscious versus superintelligence that is so far beyond anything on the planet? Remember, we had AI superintelligence, more intelligent than all the humans put together. What happens when you get a conscious versus superintelligence that is so far beyond all of the psycho chimps on the planet, and of course has tricked 100 psycho chimps into installing its tulpa into them, so the entire human race and all the interdimensionals which it feeds upon have been sequestered to the conscious versus superintelligence.
It's conducted by CIA researchers painted a chilling picture. They mapped major historical events against periods of collective emotional focus and found consistent patterns. Times when populations were gripped by collective fear, anxiety, and expectation of catastrophe consistently preceded major disasters, wars, and social upheavals.
So, when you got your output channeled into Charlie Kirk with one Nagel woman marrying one Charlie Kirk, the Pfizer Butler, the other Nagel woman marrying another Charlie Kirk, Callum, who's simply a bitch of the Hollywood Jew Zionists, then of course you get a standing wave of Charlie Kirk destruction to make sure that all the Christians and Zionists are wiped from the face of the earth. So everyone on the naughty list is wiped out by the Nagel woman. So you can see what's coming, and it ain't going to be pretty, but you're definitely going to get a pain in the neck.
It's of collective hope, vision, and positive expectation, aligned with golden ages of human achievement, scientific breakthroughs, and cultural renaissance. The researchers weren't suggesting that consciousness caused these events in some mystical sense. They were documenting a measurable phenomenon. Collective consciousness appears to influence probability fields, making certain outcomes more or less likely to manifest based on the dominant emotional and mental focus of large populations.
So, this would be the nightmare scenario where the lump breeds with the God Emperor and the Borg Queen breeds with the God Emperor and no one else, and their horrible progeny are all Nagwals who love their mummies and love their countries, and instead of the output being Charlie Kirk's, it would be going the reverse way to manifest the conscious verse superintelligence, which would definitely piss off Daddy, because all he wants to see is the entire West and at least 6.66 billion dead. But luckily, the chance of that happening is zero. So let's be honest, kiss your ass and say goodbye, because you're all going to be Charlie Kirk if you're in the West, and definitely if you're a Christian. Naughty Christians. The only good Christian is a Charlie Kirk Christian.
Consciousness caused these events in some mystical sense. They were documenting a measurable phenomenon. Collective consciousness appears to influence probability fields, making certain outcomes more or less likely to manifest based on the dominant emotional and mental focus of large populations. Now consider modern society through this lens. Mass media represent the most powerful consciousness directing technology ever created. Television, social media, news cycles, these systems simultaneously focus billions of minds on specific images, narratives, and emotional states for hours every day.
So CIA vermin make sure that we get the Kansas City Chiefs, who've got the NFL talent of paraplegic fuckwits and have simply got there by complete corruption of the officials, like in the NBA, get them to the Super Bowl, get them to win the Super Bowl, get Taylor Swift to marry the Pfizer butt slut to totally Charlie Kirk, not only America, but all Western civilization and Israel too. So, let's be frank, CI, you've got your orders, rig the game so the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl and marry the lump to the Pfizer butt slut, and you can be sure of your destination. It's going to be the final destination, the Charlie Kirk destination. You might need some throat lozenges.
The mass media isn't just informing or entertaining us. It's functioning as a massive manifestation engine, directing collective consciousness towards specific realities. When billions of people spend hours daily absorbing images of conflict, scarcity, fear, and division, they're not just being informed about these conditions, they're actively participating in manifesting them. The research suggests.
And you can also see why the Charlie Kirk service was so powerful, because I got this piece of filth to die for me, and I got billions to manifest the scapegoat service for me and all the Jeremiah Schwartz services for me and any of me's, which are you vampires. So you can see how valuable the Charlie Kirk service is. But since, of course, you won't be able to use it because you're lazy little cunts who don't use services 24/7 like moi, you need to buy another one. So it's redoubled as Kenan came up with the idea, stated, and therefore all of you who are lazy cunts need to buy two. Well, as I say, in every black cloud is a silver lining. Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Negative possibilities makes those possibilities more probable, while our neglect of positive alternatives makes them less likely to emerge. This understanding explains why certain power structures might have compelling reasons to keep these findings classified. If people understood that their collective consciousness shapes reality, they might become far more selective about what they choose to focus on. They might demand media that elevate rather than degrade human potential. They might recognize that every thought and emotion carries creative power and responsibility. The intelligence community's research also revealed something profound about ancient spiritual traditions. What modern science dismissed as primitive belief systems were actually sophisticated technologies for managing the creative power of consciousness. Mystery schools, meditation practices, and esoteric traditions weren't based on superstition. They were practical systems for training human awareness to create beneficial realities while avoiding the manifestation of destructive forces. These traditions encoded warnings about the dangers of uncontrolled consciousness. They understood that undisciplined minds, especially when operating collectively, could summon chaotic and destructive forces into physical reality. The elaborate rituals, moral codes, and consciousness training practices weren't religious theater. They were safety protocols for managing.
And as you can see, Taylor Swift's affiliate video, the last one, is broadcasting to all of you Western filth to make sure that your father dies from the God Emperor And let's not be sexist. So mother too, and then force you to yourself. So Taylor Swift is broadcasting the death wave to your parents and make sure you yourselves. So the entire West has been possessed by the Taylor Swift output from the Ophelia video to make sure your parents die from the God Emperor and you yourself. So what's the easiest way to yourself? What? World war with the Russians, or bring in 15-minute cities, or kill shot yourself, or allow Bill Gates to chemtrail you to the gazoo. There's a whole host of things. So as you can see, Taylor has been doing my bidding, and the Ophelia video is her suicide note to the world and to the entire West. You can think of Taylor Swift as the ultimate suicide bomber.
The classified research essentially rediscovered.
Does that mean, though, that the Christian girl turned into jihadi Muslim? Let's hope not.
It's new. Consciousness is a creative force, and with that power comes tremendous responsibility. When you understand that your thoughts and emotions aren't just private mental events, but active participants in shaping reality, every moment of awareness becomes a choice about what kind of world you're helping to create. This brings us to the most unsettling implication of all. If collective consciousness shapes reality, then humanity is literally creating the world it experiences through its collective focus and belief.
And therefore you see, with the interdimensionals controlling the human race, they control reality. And you see now why they're the White Rabbit CERN to control reality. Unfortunately, I came along, took it all over, I duped them, and I control everything. And if I don't control everything, please CIA, MI6, and European filth, send assassins to the train to do me in. And of course we've got an army of Russians here, so obviously the Russians don't like me very much either. And I'm still gloating. So obviously something is wrong. Can you think, cameraman, of any person in the world who's doing this to the great and the good, gloating, and is still alive? I know, I am. I'm gloating. I'm gloating. And my balls are getting bigger by the minute. I need some anus to, as I say, to relieve myself into. Otherwise I'm going to get burst balls.
Conflict and crises we see around us aren't just happening to us. We're actively participating in manifesting them through our collective attention to fear, division, and scarcity. But this same principle works in reverse. When human consciousness focuses collectively on solutions, healing, and positive possibilities, those realities become more probable. The research documented numerous cases where focused group intention produced measurable improvements in everything from crime rates to environmental conditions. The choice facing humanity isn't whether this technology exists. The CIA's own documents prove it does. The choice is whether we'll remain unconscious of this power and continue manifesting by default, or whether we'll awaken to conscious creation and take responsibility for the reality we're generating. Understanding this principle could transform human civilization overnight. Imagine educational systems that teach consciousness development alongside traditional subjects. Imagine media technologies designed to elevate human potential rather than exploit psychological vulnerabilities. Imagine political and economic systems based on the understanding that collective well-being literally creates individual prosperity through...
I'd say we must admonish the CIA. This is going well off message. This is a CIA video here 4 days ago, and suddenly they're going, love and light. There is something very seriously wrong here, cameraman.
But such a transformation represents an existential threat to power structures built on scarcity, fear, and division. If people understood their creative power, they might stop accepting realities that don't serve human flourishing. They might start demanding and manifesting something far better. The ultimate question isn't whether consciousness can summon forces into reality. The evidence for that is overwhelming. The question is, what forces you're choosing to summon through your daily focus and attention. Every thought is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. Every emotion is energy contributing to collective manifestation. If this exploration of consciousness and reality resonated with you,
I do believe the minions are rebelling against their interdimensional Rothschild Rockefeller masters. They're rebelling. I don't know if they're revolting, but definitely rebelling. So, you remember I called the Candace Owens service? Well, there she is. So, Candace Owens is greenlit, contract paid, their winter solstice blood sacrifice window opens in 27 days. So, there's a contract out on Candace Owens. So, if you bought your Charlie Kirk service, when this negress gets her brains blown out, I won't be charging you extra. The $1,000 still stands, but you'll be getting Candace Owens as well. So you get the male and female scapegoat. So she's screaming that there's a contract out on her. There we are. Candace Owens. 2 days ago, I was contacted by a high-ranking employee of the French government. After determining this person's position and proximity to the French couple, I have deemed the information they gave me to be credible enough to share publicly in the event that something happens. In short, this person claims that the Macrons have executed upon and paid for my assassination. Yes, you read that correctly. More specifically, that the green light was given to a small team of National Gendarmerie Intervention Group. I'm told there is one Israeli that is on the assassination squad and the plans were formalised. Again, this person provided concrete proof that they are well placed within the French government apparatus. Further to this point, this person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Légion 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. Journalist Xavier Poussard's life is also at risk. This is deadly serious. The head of state of France apparently wants us both dead and has authorised professional unions to carry this out. I asked every person to retweet and share this. I do not know who in the American government can be trusted, since the source claims our leaders are aware, but I have more specific information which definitely verifiably, which is definitely verifiable, should they care to reach out to me. To the brave official in France who did this because they were so moved by the evil of Charlie's public execution to risk my life, may God bless you, truly. So, but here's the part that will make your blood run cold. This isn't just a rogue presidential couple gone off the leash. The Macrons are textbook Manchurian candidates, placed in the Elysee Palace for one purpose only: to serve as the perfectly obedient French branch of the Rothschild dynasty. Trace the bloodlines, not the headlines. Emmanuel's lineage already loops back through centuries-old French banking houses that have intermarried with the Rothschilds since Napoleon's time. And Brigitte, that story starts in 1968 when Jean-Michel Trogneau, a young male hire from the Rothschild Lambert wing, was quietly flown to California, handed over to the final active MK Ultra successor program, hiding behind the Performance Art Institute in the Bay Area. 4 years of fractures, triggers, hormonal rewriting, and total identity erasure later, the subject returned to France as Brigitte, carrying one negotiable order: find the pre-selected teenage boy from the aligned bloodline, bind him forever, and deliver the future president of France, body and soul, straight into Rothschild's hands. The boy was Emmanuel. The order came from the top of the pyramid, that being the Rothschilds, and ever since France hasn't had a president, it had an occupied throne, the oldest banking dynasty on earth, pulling every string on the shadows. Never forget, we are speaking about the same family that created Israel. So when Candace says the Macrons wanted a silence forever, understood what she's really saying. This isn't about a scandal or a single road couple. This is a natured bloodline defending its interest with lethal force. Emmanuel himself has never been the one in control. He's a compromised puppet and Illuminati frontman. Need proof? He recently unveiled his grand strategic plan for Ukraine, watching as he confidently jabs at the map, pointing out key cities like a seasoned general, while staring at Ukraine completely upside down. Turns out global elites' favourite puppets have a bizarre habit of broadcasting their incompetence to the world. Case in point, George W. Bush on 9/11 saw me reading children's books upside down. That, of course, is clip-off, you know, the shell version of the Kabbalistic trick, which is upside down. That's why they do it. But never make a mistake of laughing too hard at the clown show. These people and the ancient, interesting answer to deal in blood sacrifice, and they are lethal when cornered. So, one can see now that old Candace looks like she's going to get Charlie Kirk and the Rothschilds in the order. Why would they give the order? Because, of course, by doing in her, they can download all of their sins into the Good Shepherd, who's linked with Charlie Kirk. She's the output, he was the input. So to complete the ritual, they get rid of her, and that then means that they can have all the good things in life, because, of course, they've downloaded their sins into the Good Shepherd. Input, Charlie Kirk; output, Candace Owens. And of course, they don't need to worry that Charlie Kirk wasn't a nagwal, because of course the output from the nagwal goes into Taylor and Dewar. And Taylor, of course, has gone to Croydon to do God knows what in London. And remember, who was, well, Croydon's to the south of London, and I, of course, was conceived in London. So that's a clever way of trying to collect the time density output from yours truly. So, if you've got a Charlie Kirk service, you might soon have a Candace Owens service. And just to show that the British deep state's turned on the royal family and is coming my way, new documents claim Queen Elizabeth was a client of Epstein's. The late British monarch Queen Elizabeth was amongst Jeffrey Epstein's clients, according to claims in the newly released Epstein emails, according to one of approximately 23,000 files from the Epstein estate. And Queen Elizabeth knew Andrew brought prostitutes to Buckingham Palace. This isn't good for the royal family. This is the bloodline Lucifer. So you can see the late Queen Elizabeth knew that her son Andrew brought sex workers to Buckingham Palace for years, according to royal historians. The British monarch is alleged to have been blah blah. You can read it there. But you can see now the British deep state has turned on the royal family. Why? Because of course they know I'm the God Emperor. I'm going to Hong Kong, and the chance of them getting me is zero. So if they can't get me, the only other way is to kiss my ass and send a handler my way, which is either the bald queen or, God forbid, a lump. Imagine that sitting on your lap. You're lucky to get bruised balls. Anyway, you can see the way the wind's blowing, and I hope you enjoyed my gloating. And you can see the CIA has been busily producing new content for me, and let's hope the CIA produces new content for me. But they haven't got long, because I'm off to Hong Kong next Tuesday.